Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today I am going to tell you how Coach Prime and Colorado proved the haters wrong. In this video, I'm going to go through the biggest reasons why I believe Colorado has exceeded expectations this season. But before I get into those reasons, I wanted to first talk about where Colorado was viewed before the season and in the preseason, and kind of talk about the expectations for this team headed into the season, because we covered a few different Colorado stories over the offseason, and it felt like everyone was just kind of all over the map on this team. There was this contingent of people that I would call the haters that were like, hey, Colorado's going to win 2-3 games and Deion's going to be saying adios before the season ends, right? There was that contingent of people. Then you also had the diehard Deion Colorado fans that were saying, no, this team is good enough to compete for a Big 12 championship. I felt in the middle because I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, and I'll get into some of those here in a minute or two, but I kind of felt like, hey, you're doing this whole roster turnover situation again. You have a whole new coaching staff that you're bringing in, two new coordinators. It just felt like there was a lot of moving pieces and there wasn't a lot of continuity, even if I thought they did bring in, a lot of talent on the defensive line. Even if I thought LeJohntay Wester is going to be good. I still just thought that they were going to be playing a lot of Big 12 teams that had a lot of continuity and had a lot of, similar coaching staffs for multiple years. And I thought maybe Colorado would maybe be good because they'd have the top end talent, with the two headliner guys to sometimes beat teams that they shouldn't. But then I also thought that maybe the continuity would, lack of continuity would hurt them and they would lose to teams that they should beat. So that's kind of where I fell in the middle. I thought 7-5 was the max wins for this team. I thought that was the ceiling. Obviously, dead wrong. But before I get into the biggest reasons why, obviously the biggest reason why is the head coach, Deion. He is the guy that has his fingerprints all over this program. He's the guy that brought in all the talent in this program. He's the guy that did the roster turnover when people said they were skeptical of that. He is the guy that got in two coordinators when people were skeptical of that. And, he's the guy that's developed Travis Hunter to be talented enough to win the Heisman Trophy and develop Shedeur Sanders to the point where he's going to be the number one quarterback taken in the NFL draft next year. So obviously credit to Deion. But obviously most of these reasons I'm going to say have Deion's fingerprints over it, but I just wanted to address that at the top because I think if I didn't mention him, people would be like, hey, you didn't mention Deion at all. Obviously he deserves credit. Some of these things people aren't going to like, but I'm just trying to look at this as fairly as possible. Let's look at this. I do think a huge reason Colorado is in the situation that they're at is the schedule that they got drawn in the Big 12. And a reason that I thought like, hey, I think this team is going to be like 7. The reason I bring that up is the reason I thought this team was going to be 7-5 heading into the season as a max, maybe 5-7 as the floor, was because I looked at the schedule and I was like, hey, I think a lot of people that are saying Colorado Big 12 championship aren't looking at this schedule. Because if you look at it, the preseason schedule, they were playing there was 5 teams in the preseason top 25 from the Big 12. All 5 of them were on Colorado's schedule, right? And the Big 12 knew that Deion was this big ratings draw. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to have Colorado playing the best teams possible in the Big 12 to try and draw more ratings for the TV networks, right? Well, what happened with Colorado's schedule this year heading into the preseason? Phil Steele, and I referenced this multiple times on videos, had Colorado's schedule as the 13th toughest in all of college football. And we had the 5 ranked teams that they were supposed to play: Arizona, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas. They also were going to play Nebraska, who I thought was going to be much improved under Matt Rhule in year 2. Another year for Texas Tech under Joey McGuire. Dave Aranda at Baylor is coaching for his job. Year 2 under Scott Satterfield. I just thought that, like, hey, these are going to be a lot better teams that are going to be, so even kind of like the easy wins, if you look at it for Colorado, these might not actually be easy wins because these teams are going to be improved, right? Well, what happened with the Big 12 this year? What happened with Colorado's schedule? It turns out, if you look at Colorado's schedule now on ESPN strength of schedule, they're 73rd in all of college football. They dropped 60 spots. Now, strength of schedule, you can look at different places. It can vary by 20 spots. But still, dropping that much is a huge reason why Colorado has had the success that they had. Their schedule's a lot easier than I think people thought in the preseason. If this did look like a cupcake schedule at the beginning of the preseason, I think it would be easier for people to be like, hey, this team actually does have a path to go to the Big 12 championship. But all the 5 ranked teams to start the season in the Big 12, none of them are ranked right now. And 4 of those 5 are in danger of not making a bowl game. Oklahoma State already has 7 losses. Arizona, Kansas already have 7 losses. I think Utah might have, 6. Arizona, Kansas have 6 losses. I think Utah has 6 losses now after losing to Colorado. And Kansas State, I know they beat Colorado, are probably going to finish with like 7, 8 wins, but are a little bit more disappointing than we thought heading into the season. So, and just the Big 12 in general, kind of the only team that's really met their preseason expectations is Iowa State. And like, I think they're predicted to be 4th or 5th, and they're like 4th right now. But everyone else at the top, BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, are, playing a lot better than what people were expecting heading into the season. So credit to all those teams for being better than what people thought. And credit to all of them for, and Colorado for taking advantage of their schedules. Because again, Colorado, easier schedule than I thought heading into the season. So I think that is a big reason why. Because I think if they actually did have the 13th toughest schedule in the country, this schedule, I think the record would be a little bit differently. I still do think they would win a decent amount of games, but I do think if they were playing 5 ranked teams, things would be a little different. Call me crazy. Another huge reason Colorado is where they are right now is probably one of the most obvious reasons. It's the 2 star attractions of this team, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. If you watch Colorado enough, even when things get tight, even when things aren't going well and drives aren't going well on offense, or the defense is, giving up, long drives, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders have this ability to kind of buoy their team. Travis Hunter won them the Baylor game. If Travis Hunter was not spectacular in that Baylor game, they lose that game. Now, a lot of things had to happen for Colorado to win that game, but Travis Hunter was absolutely spectacular in that game. The fact that he's been healthy for the majority of this season, like almost every game, I don't think he missed a game. I think he might have missed some time with a little injury, but he has been healthy this year. That is huge that you have an All-American wide receiver and defensive back type player that's going to win the Heisman, or probably is going to win the Heisman. And hey, man, Shedeur Sanders, I think if you had any other first round draft pick quarterback from this draft coming up on this Colorado team, I think they're a 500 team. Shedeur Sanders is spectacular. He's not spectacular like Patrick Mahomes spectacular, or Andrew Luck spectacular, or Josh Allen spectacular, where you see all of this like crazy physical gifts and all of that stuff. But Shedeur Sanders, his offensive line still sucks. They still suck. I know they've gotten a little better, but they're at the bottom when it comes to like offensive rushing yards in the entire country. Shedeur Sanders is still able to find time, extend plays. He does not make mistakes. He just doesn't. I thought maybe looking at his touchdown interception ratio in 2023, I thought like, hey, well, maybe the reason that like has that good of a ratio is because maybe he's not making as like, many, he's not taking as many shots. He's not putting the ball into traffic. No, if you watch him, he just makes very smart decisions. What was the one bad game he played this year? Was that Nebraska? Other than that, he has been mostly perfect. There is never a time where it's like, oh my God, Shedeur had a terrible interception. Like that's very, very, very rare. So the fact that they have Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, 2 top 5 picks in the NFL draft to kind of buoy this roster and just to be elite most of the time, if not all the time, is a huge reason why they are where they are. Those guys are absolute studs. Um, all right. Another reason why, again, fingerprints of Dion on all of these. The transfer portal stuff did work, and it worked specifically, I believe, in two places. The defensive line is absolutely spectacular. They're currently leading the Big 12 in sacks with 33. That puts them sixth in all of college football for sacks. That is huge when you are having leads against teams that are trying to come back against you, and you get to have all these pass rushers that can just maul the other team's offensive line. And if you actually looked at a lot of the interviews Dion was doing with the media before the season, he was constantly raving about his defensive line. And those additions are a huge reason why Colorado has had an improved defensive unit this year, and why they have the record that they are, and why, if they win the Big 12 championship, it's a defensive line is a huge, huge reason. The other place that they hit out of the park in the transfer portal was the wide receivers. We knew that they had Travis Hunter. We knew that they had Jimmy Horn from last year. Travis Hunter is amazing. Jimmy Horn is a very serviceable wide receiver in college football. LeJontay Wester, I think, should be in the NFL next year. I think he is spectacular. He caught the Hail Mary pass against Baylor. He returned a punt for a touchdown against Utah. That dude is an absolute stud to transfer for FAU. I also think Shepard, the other transfer from Vanderbilt, I think he has been an awesome weapon for Shedeur too. Combined, Shedeur and all of these wide receivers are currently 7th in the country in passing yards per game. It's one of the best passing attacks in all of college football. And it's partly because they hit home runs in the transfer portal with the wide receivers. So credit to Colorado for getting some awesome wide receivers to help this offense and help Shedeur with an offensive line that has improved, but I still think is pretty poor. Okay. Another reason of why I think Colorado has been so successful this year, I think the fact, this might be another one that people won't like. I think the fact that they lost to Nebraska early, and that they just got their butts kicked and they got destroyed and they got embarrassed, I think that is psychologically was very, very good for Colorado. In the moment, it didn't feel good. Everyone was going on TV and saying, like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster season for Colorado. They should have we thought they were going to destroy Nebraska, and Nebraska just dog walked them. It felt like it was over like 5 minutes into the game, or at least a quarter or two into the game. And I think this was really important because it was a humbling experience. It was really good, I think, for Colorado, because what happened after that loss? People complained about Colorado for a week, said that this was a disaster, yada, yada, yada. What happened? People stopped paying attention. Kind of the noise with Colorado, all of the noise kind of went away for a while. And it felt like it was the first time in almost a year that Colorado got to work and improve and kind of get better, with no one watching. And I think the fact that they didn't become ranked again until like just a few weeks ago, I think that was really, really good for them, where they, you got to admit, for a bunch of college kids to have Lil Wayne and The Rock and Snoop Dogg and whatever other, crazy A-list celebrities come to their football game in week 3 against Colorado State, you got to admit that if you're a young kid, you're probably going to, think that your farts don't stink. And you're going to think that, like, yeah, man, we did it. And you're going to have a little bit of disease and more with you potentially. So I think the fact that they got to just kind of be out of the spotlight for a while and no one was really paying attention to them, I think that was really good for them. I think psychologically that was good. And then now they've been able to kind of build something over the course of the season with people not paying as much attention to them. Also, too, that kind of plays into the schedule thing, where it was like Colorado, it was never like Colorado at, or I guess they played Kansas State when they were ranked, but it was never like, oh my God, Colorado at number 15 Arizona, or at home against number 12 Utah. They're just kind of away from the spot. I think that was really, really good for them. So I think those are the biggest reasons. There's obviously other ones that we can name. I could sit here. I've already been talking for 15 minutes. I could probably sit here for 50 minutes and talk about reasons why, but those are kind of like the big ones that really stuck out to me. The schedule, Shedeur and Travis Hunter being phenomenal, the defensive line, the wide receivers, and the fact that they, kind of had the spotlight off of them for a good chunk of the season. I wanted to finish this discussion here today talking about Colorado, talking about them for the future, because we did a video this offseason saying, well, what if Colorado does just go and win the Big 12 this year? We did a hypothetical. My hypothetical was like, well, Travis Hunter's winning the Heisman. Shadeur's probably going to be a Heisman candidate and 100% the top quarterback taken in the draft. And I also said, hey, I think that Deion would have his kind of pick of any coaching job in the country. Well, we went through all of the coaching jobs and we came to the conclusion like, hey, a lot of these big programs aren't going to be, hiring anybody. So Deion's probably staying at Colorado. Now there are rumors of like, will Deion go to the NFL? I don't know. That was the thing that annoyed me is when I laid out that scenario this offseason, everyone's like, Deion's not leaving, blah, 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 blah. Okay, whatever. We'll just assume that he's not leaving. I don't think he is, but we'll just assume that he's not. Is this strategy for Colorado sustainable? Is this something that Deion could replicate year over year over year over year over year? And can Deion, let's say, have a 5-year run where the worst year that he has at Colorado is like an 8-win season? Or let's even do a 6-win season. I'm skeptical of that. I'm still skeptical of that. Why am I skeptical of that? A lot of the reasons that we went through here. You're not going to have 2 top 5 picks every single year. You're not going to have 2 top 10 picks every single year. And again, what if this season that Colorado's having now, what if they didn't have, a first-round quarterback in Shedeur, and they had like, let's say, a 4th-round quarterback? I just think that makes it a lot more difficult. And this team has 30 seniors on it, I think, so far this year. And we have just seen it happen several times so far in this transfer portal era in college football, where we've seen teams, have a flash in a pan season and a one-hit wonder season because they aced the transfer portal. Lincoln Riley's first year at USC, he gets Caleb Williams, he gets Jordan Addison, and a few other guys. USC is a game away from making the 14 playoff, right? What's happened since then for USC? Not much good stuff, right? Michigan State, first year Mel Tucker. They get Kenneth Walker. They get some other guys in the transfer portal. They take off. They win 10 games. Well, Michigan State hasn't been good since. Now Mel Tucker, got fired in Michigan State for reasons we won't discuss here today. But Michigan State, one-hit wonder. TCU, when Sonny Dykes came in, one-hit wonder. Had some nice transfer portal additions. Florida State, people don't really know this about them. A lot of like their success the last 2 years prior to this year was because they had a bunch of really good transfer portal guys. Like all of the receivers that Jordan Travis was throwing, passes to last year, all of them were like transfers that came in that year, and then all of them got drafted to the NFL. The odds that you're going to get that every single year is very, very low. Now you can. That doesn't mean you never do it again. It's not like it happens once and that's it. But that's kind of my fear with Colorado and Deion, is that they aren't hitting the high school recruiting that hard. Now they're getting some good guys like Jordan Seaton. It looks like Julian Lewis decommitted from USC. It looks like he might flip his commitment to Colorado. I know there was another really good offensive line prospect that was at the game this weekend against Utah. I just don't know if that's enough to build a foundation for something and to have year over year success in college football when there's so much other stuff going on. I could be wrong. I'm willing to admit that. I could be wrong on that. Deion might be the anomaly where he might just be able to make that stuff work. But I also think a huge reason that they had a bunch of guys that are really talented come in through the transfer portal is if you listen to a lot of them were like, hey, we wanted to come here and win. We wanted to play with Shedeur and Travis Hunter. And I kind of wonder what happens when those guys aren't there, because you can, say that's, Deion got these guys here or whatever. I still think Shedeur being amazing is a big reason why some of these guys came, because you want to play with, a superstar quarterback. This kind of happened with Texas. That was why the Arch Manning commit was so huge for Steve Sarkisian, because if you noticed, after Arch committed, you started getting all this other really, really talented offensive talent commit around Arch. You got guys coming to Texas now in the transfer portal, and I think that stuff is really important. Again, Dion might be the outlier. He might be the anomaly, and he might be able to replicate this year over year over year. But I'll believe it when I see it. That's kind of where I still land on this. Even though, again, credit to Colorado, credit to Dion, credit to the Shedeur, Travis, uh, Pat Shermer, everyone that is part of this Colorado season. Even if they somehow lose these last two games and go 8-4, it's still a phenomenal season. Exceeded expectations and have helped me create some really good content. So thank you very much. We've been talking for 20 minutes here in this video. If you're still here, thank you so much. Please hit that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. That is the number one thing that you can do to help support the show, and it costs you absolutely $0. Feel free to leave a comment what you thought about this video, and then also feel free to check out other Sports Detective podcast channel videos on this show. So thank you very much for watching. We'll talk to you next time.